All right, we are going to go ahead and kick things off. We're right at 10:45 here. I want to welcome everyone. This is our Parks for People, Creating Access, Elevating Equity breakout session. Hope you all have been enjoying the summit so far as we get through day two. I also want to just point out you can add any questions for our presenters as we go along in the chat box. And we recommend that you double click when we are sharing slides, double click that panel so that you can see the screen a little bit better. Just a quick reminder, this session is being recorded, and we also want to thank Cleveland Public Library for hosting us here on the Hop-In platform. I'm going to go ahead and kick things off, tell you a little bit about the 10-minute walk campaign and the goal that the City of Cleveland has set. We're really fortunate to have partnered with some other city departments as well as Trust for Public Land to rethink how we look at our city parks and how we actually engage our community as we continue to update those and make capital investments in these great city assets. So I'm joined by Jessica Fox-Gift from our Mayor's Office of Capital Projects. She works very closely with our Parks Department as we do make park updates and renovations. She's going to talk about sort of her process to assess the parks and really prioritize which ones get updated on that sort of ongoing capital cycle. And then Sean Terry from Trust for Public Land, our interim director, is going to talk a little bit about just what Trust for Public Land does here, especially in Ohio and in the Cleveland region, but how they are helping to create access through community engagement and working with us at the city through a project that I'll be sharing shortly to make sure that we are really engaging the community at the right points and in the right ways. Of course, it's a little bit tricky these days. We are in a pandemic situation, so we can't do some of the outreach that we traditionally would have. We hope that we will be able to resume some of that as we move past the pandemic, but he's going to share some of the unique ways that they've been engaging the community through that. So I'm going to share my screen. Awesome. Maybe Sean or Jessica, if you could unmute yourselves and tell me if you can see my slides just really quick.
Yeah, we see it.
Beautiful. Okay. So first and foremost, I wanted to, there we go, talk about how we sort of got here, where the 10-minute walk campaign kind of stemmed from. So many of you are aware we updated our climate action plan in 2018, and what was really important for us in the process of that is elevating equity through climate action. We really were sort of unique in the development of this plan, kind of compared to other municipalities around the country, in that we really emphasized equity as a part of our plan. So one of the big things that we did through that were these neighborhood workshops to really hear from our residents what is important to you. We did 12 different workshops, and what they want to see. It was less about sort of the climate side and more about, what's important to you? What are the assets in your community? One of the big things that sort of stood out to us was in every single workshop across all 12, we heard the words clean and safe and healthy. Clean, safe, and healthy were constantly brought up from our residents. So that tells us that that's something that's really important. And, just going back a slide, we tried to reflect that in some of the language that we use. So, I have two of our sort of cross-cutting or focus areas from the plan up here: the clean water and vibrant green space, cross-cutting priorities. The 10-minute walk campaign really touches on these. And, sorry if this slide is a little bit blurry, but that is through the development of our climate action plan, really what got Mayor Jackson to sign on to this 10-minute walk campaign. So the campaign itself is through a number of municipal cities across the U.S. to ensure that all residents have a 10-minute walk or about a half-mile access to a clean, safe, and programmed park or green space. So in Cleveland right now, we have about 83% of our residents that are within that 10-minute walk. But I think some, Jessica will hopefully touch on this a little bit, some of those parks, while they are technically considered a park, are not necessarily that clean, safe, programmed park that residents actually want to come and use and feel safe sending their children to. So, I mentioned that we've got 83% of our residents living within that range. That is just higher, or significantly higher than the national average of 55%. And recently our park score rating went up to 35 from 29, which is really exciting. At the end of last year, we were fortunate enough to receive a grant from the National Recreation and Parks Association in collaboration with the Trust for Public Land and Urban Land Institute to really, the focus of this grant is to provide some technical assistance, and we're in the process of hiring a consultant who's going to help us look at how we engage the community through the capital process. So I think historically, it's sort of been project is slated for funding. We know that it's going to happen. It goes into design. During the design process, we engage our residents, but sometimes it's towards the end once a design has already been created, and residents maybe don't feel like they have the space to give their feedback because they don't want to rock the boat too much with the existing design that's being presented. And then from there, it's built and hopefully used by our residents. So through this process, we're going to kind of look at where there are opportunities to engage with our residents, to plug in to that design so that we are really reflecting what the community wants and needs in the final product that will be that new park. And also giving us sort of a menu of strategies that we can employ while we are doing that engagement to make sure that we are truly hearing from our residents what it is that they want to hear. Very glad that Sean is able to join us today because he's going to talk a little bit about some of the work TPL has been doing around this. And personally, I just feel it's really creative and innovative. I'm really excited for the folks here to see this during a pandemic, because again, we can't be in person, but they've found some really unique ways to still get some of that feedback and make residents feel engaged. So, a couple other pieces I just want to highlight. This really connects for me with a lot of other larger citywide efforts and planning efforts and initiatives from the citywide master plan, bikeway master plan. We're hopeful that through some of this work, we're going to be able to pull in both some of the lessons learned, but also some of the engagement strategies to help inform some of these wider citywide initiatives. Additionally, the Cleveland Tree Plan and stormwater management, I think it's we're not surprised to see that the parks have a lot of connection to some of our other climate action areas. And for me, it also connects with our urban drawdown initiative. So as we are trying to better capture our organic wastes and reuse them, our parks can really be a great source to and sort of land use application for some of that work. So with that, I'm going to just say thank you for letting me sort of kick things off, and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Sean. Or I'm sorry, turn it over to Jessica. Sorry, Sean, I got out of order here. I'm going to turn over to Jessica and pull up her slides. Jessica, are you still with us? Let's see here. All right, well, I think we may have briefly lost Jessica. So Sean, I'm going to turn it over to you. You're going to be sharing your slides, right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Happy to go out of order here. No worries,
We'll mix it up.
Thank you for inviting me to sit on this panel and be a part of this discussion. And I'm super excited to represent the Trust for Public Land. Let me pull up my... Did that come up? Can you see my screen, Kristen?
Not yet, but give it just a second. You might need to click there's like a share button to make it go live. And if not, I have your slides here that I can pull up.
Yeah, maybe you want to do that. It's not recognizing my PowerPoint here.
Okay, then let's do, hey, no problem. That's why we tested and you sent me the slides, trying to be as prepared as possible. All right, let's see. Okay, I'm going to mute myself. So if you can see, I'm just.
Not yet. There we go. All right. So thank you again, Kristen, and good morning, everyone. Sean Terry with the Trust for Public Land. The Trust for Public Land is a national organization, and our mission is very simple. We create parks and protect land for people to ensure that they have healthy and livable lives and communities. At the core of what we do and is vital for all of our work is just the recognition in community, putting community first and understanding what it is that is valuable and important to their lives in the park spaces, and really honing in on that connection to health and nature. Kristen, you can advance. The next slide. All right. The Trust has been around for about 45 years, and we have offices in 25 different cities around the country, and we have a staff of about 300 people. I sit on what we call our parks planning and design development team and green infrastructure team. My background is actually in urban planning. And I was really excited. I've been with the Trust now for close to a year, and was really excited to find a home with this organization because, one, we do place an emphasis on community, but two, it really allows me to have a very intentional and focused perspective as a planner, identifying a land use that is near and dear to my heart. I've kind of grown up in an environment where I've always relied on parks and programming to be an outlet, constructive outlet for me personally, and really excited to be able to incorporate that into to my professional work. Using the metrics around health, climate, and equity, we sort of use a data-driven approach to understanding and quantifying values that can be found in parks. A lot of times those sit sort of at the surface, things that we can obviously see, like Kristen alluded to with the 10-minute walk in terms of proximity to homes with park spaces. But then also those underlying values like green infrastructure, opportunities to capture stormwater in parks, opportunities to create health metrics through fitness and other active and passive recreation amenities in parks. And so combining those efforts go into what we classify as a park score or park serve ranking. And I'll touch on that in just a sec. Next slide, please. I kind of touched on this, but again, our mission is simple. We create parks for people, for communities, to ensure healthy and livable lives. You can advance, Kristen. So the commitment to the 10-minute walk. The 10-minute walk obviously is a national initiative, but we are super excited that we have such a wonderful team here at the city. I talked to my colleagues around the country, and not everybody is quite as fortunate to have an actively engaged 10-minute walk team from the city. Anytime that you can combine efforts from planning, from capital projects, from sustainability, and kind of have a brain trust that we can all rely upon, I think that really drives our efforts. And again, at the Trust, we couldn't be more excited to work with a group like that. In the last sentence here on this slide, we talk about the importance of increasing access to a quality park from 75 to 100%. That's sort of a baseline that the Trust for Public Land uses. Kristen, you can advance. But you will see here in Cleveland, and Kristen mentioned it earlier, we're actually beyond that. This is a snapshot of our Park Serve data, and it shows our ranking. To the right, you see 82% circled, a national park score that places us in the 35th percentile among cities. And if you advance one more slide, that was 2019 data. In 2020, you can see that ranking has actually updated. We now sit in the 29th position, and 83% of Cleveland residents live within a 10-minute walk. So that's a very great baseline. We have a head start to really creating a significant impact. But again, it's more than just access. It's about creating quality access and functionality in a park space that we really like to emphasize. Definitely want to hear from communities and understand what it is that their needs are. But then there are certain things that we can do to really amplify that. So if you want to advance, Kristen. Again, where access to the benefits of nature contributes to broader disparities, engaging people in a process that creates parks and protecting land, and believing that both the process and a result that can be transformational. Those statements are critical to understanding equity. We talk about access, and not every community has access equally to the same level of amenities. So again, hearing from communities, understanding the disconnect sometimes that exists, disparities culturally, racially, socially that may exist and sort of bleed into the park experience is important. And so when we engage with communities, we try to think about that and use our platform as a vessel for two-way dialogue. Next slide, please. In 2019, the Trust for Public Land released an equity report that really sought out to identify those communities that were of the highest need here in Cleveland. And so we recognized 5 neighborhoods: West Boulevard, Clark Fulton, Union Mouse, Cam's Corner, and Old Brooklyn as the 5 communities in Cleveland that have the highest needs. And we targeted these communities for opportunities to improve upon that need by creating new park spaces or improving existing ones. Next slide. So in understanding that, I take you to our first opportunity to create a pilot effort here that addresses that, which is in the Clark Fulton neighborhood. I won't steal Jessica's thunder, I promise, but I do want to recognize this as an opportunity that we have to really improve a space that is of significant need. And you can see Clark Fulton is one of the most densest and diverse neighborhoods in Cleveland. So when we talk about creating benefit for communities, this is an opportunity that will create benefit for a multitude of different races, ethnicities, et cetera, in an area that is in significant need in Cleveland. Next slide. So traditional engagement sees us often do public input meetings. We do design charrettes where we engage with people in person also. Public intercepts where you may see people with clipboards coming up to you in public spaces and asking you questions about parks and what do you desire to see in the park. Unfortunately, in the COVID reality, we weren't able to do much of that in 2020. So here at the Trust for Public Land, we've had to seek out creative ways to maintain community engagement while still being able to collect valuable information from the public and apply it to planning efforts that will inform our process and ultimately inform the spaces that they are going to be functioning in. So in doing that and understanding that this is an important and critical pilot opportunity, we drew upon a local Ohio resource known as Art by Love, based out of Akron, Ohio. They're a designer that sits sort of at the intersection of creative placemaking and active community engagement. And they helped us to create a community tool that we're calling the Parks Unlimited Activity Book, which is a 16-page book that we use to generate dialogue and obtain feedback from residents. And we've employed that here in the Clark Fulton example. And I'll kind of show you a little bit of what that looks like and what we hope to accomplish. Next slide. So the activity book is 16 pages in total, intentionally designed to incorporate some of the multicultural aspects of the Clark Fulton community. The activities are sort of twofold. One, we want people to have fun first and foremost, to invest the time into actually completing the book. But 2, we want to be able to suss out as much information as we can about how they use the park, the people that they frequent parks with, whether that's with their family, their friends, and sort of identify some of the things that they like to see in the park. Right now, we've roughly distributed about 1,000 copies and leveraging both retail and community development organizations to meet residents where they are. And then our sort of next phase of distribution, we hope to leverage programming at the Clark Recreation Center as well as distribution through Clark Elementary School. Next slide. And here's some of the fun parts. So here's to the left, you see a semi-completed version of this. That's actually a copy of My Parks Unlimited. which I draw upon each day to do a little bit more to complete that. But you can see that there's some really cool and unique opportunities to learn about the community. Julia DeBurgos is a local community and historical icon that we identify and highlight in the book. And you may draw reference to the Julia DeBurgos Art and Culture Center here in Cleveland. And the image to the right is actually just some information on how to utilize the feedback loop, because we can't, again, connect with people personally. We're relying upon a Dropbox method to really allow people to so safely and socially distance while communicating with one another and providing feedback to us. Again, the book itself is 16 pages in total, and there are a number of other activities that aren't listed here, like getting to know you, an interview your family or neighbor, a community word finder that identifies local flora and fauna indigenous to Cleveland, and a number of other awesome activities. Next slide. And our feature activity is the create your own dream playground. And this is actually the bifold center of the activity book. It's 2 pages. We've identified a number of amenities that are pretty common that we found in prior sort of design charrettes with community members. We often hear sort of the usual suspects and what people like to see in parks, so we've made sure to indicate those in the icons that trim the border. But then we also include several others that people may not think about in terms of how they can be created and integrated into a park space. And so this is the opportunity for folks to really drive upon their interest in the park space. And what one of the unique opportunities here is the fact that the city's making a significant investment in not just the park itself, but also the rec center in the years to come. So we have the opportunity to really maximize the benefits of the types of amenities, both for an indoor and outdoor experience in this location. Next slide. And here you can kind of see how we've sort of been able to integrate some of the activity book pages into more of in-person touch points. We haven't done a lot of this, but toward the back end of the summer, we were able to piggyback on the efforts of local community organizations like Metro West CDC and some of their in-person touch points to actually blow up the activity pages, invite residents to participate. And on the image to the right, you actually see me sort of making the connection between the icons and the park space itself. And I think on the next slide, you'll see a couple more images from us in the field as well. Here you can see how children and parents as well sort of gravitated to those engagement boards and really shared their feedback with us. At present, the community engagement boards are actually located at the Julia DeBurgos Art Center. So we have provided a platform for people to continue to provide feedback in a sort of a controlled environment. Next slide. And so as we shift gears into sort of the fall and winter integration of this tool, we want to continue our outreach efforts. Design development is sort of pending, and funding and construction is a little further out, and I'll defer to Jessica on the specifics around that. But we do have a very open and sort of engaging period to really hear from community residents. So I want to identify, again, where the Dropbox is located, just in front of the Clark Rec Center at 5700 Clark Avenue. And the Parks Unlimited activity book itself, it is not exclusive to Clark residents. We want to invite other residents who are nearby and in neighboring communities to also participate, because we anticipate that they will be looking forward to enjoying that park space as well in the future to come. And I think that concludes my portion, Kristen. I'm not sure if there's any other slides there. Just wanted to recognize our collaborations, and here's my contact information for folks who would like to reach out.
thank you so much, Sean. That was awesome. Great overview. And again, the activity book is just such a unique way to engage the community during a pandemic. I had noted, please include any questions for our presenters in the chat box. There's one, Sean, before I move on. Can the activity book be available at neighborhood library branches? And it may already be, right?
To neighborhood libraries, but we get the library that is nearest to the Clark community. That's something that we haven't done in this example. The activity book is also being used in other cities that TPL works in. We've utilized that strategy, so we should definitely talk about that further. I think you're muted, Kristen.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sean. With that, I'm going to turn over to Jessica. Sorry, we jumped around a little bit, but glad that we've got you here. I'm going to pull up your slides, and you just say ready to go when you.
Sounds good. All right, ready to go. Thank you. So my name is Jessica Fox-Gift. I am the Manager of Research and Planning in the Mayor's Office of Capital Projects. Part of my role is to help inform and recommend park investment through our citywide portfolio. So that's kind of what I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about, is the capital investment plan, the methodology, our goals, and how kind of we come to the decision-making priorities for our parks. My slide is not nearly as colorful as Sean's. It's kind of dry, actually, so I'll try and get through it as quickly as possible and leave for some questions. But Kristen, if you could go to the next slide, that'd be great. So again, today for the presentation overview, what I'm really hoping to communicate with everyone clearly are the plan's goals, strategy, objective, how we have planning process for things, the funding available in different types for the park investment, what our outcomes are, which relates to a lot of what Sean was talking about on the national rankings with the TPL group, the Trust for Public Land Park Score, and then some overall project lessons, which we've actually been implementing through our Office of Sustainability support with the 10-minute walk campaign and the assistance of the Trust for Public Land. Next slide, please. So with our capital investment plan, what we really set out to do in 2016 was complete an equity-based plan that's going to help decide, help us make decisions to improve the quality of our access to parks. Now, you heard Kristen kind of talk about, we've got that 83% right now with our residents having access to parks, but maybe not all of those parks are worth walking to. So that's something that we're trying to work towards and kind of making those strategic investments. And really that was part of the goal of this, was to have a goal that was led with equity and that we were going to incrementally and systematically improve the quality and access of our city parks. We believe that it's a right and not a privilege to have a safe and healthy access to parks. That falls in line with our partners over at TPL, and working with them, we've been really, I think, able to elevate some of the in relation to access to parks through some of the reports and information that they've been able to provide for us. So we're happy to have TPL have TPL actually be able to influence some of this capital investment plan in mind. Next slide, please. So with the strategy, we conduct an inventory and conditions assessment related to our portfolio every 3 years. That helps us plan for our 3-year capital investment cycle. Our inventory is listed below. As you can see, we've got pretty vast amount of inventory, and to condense all of these assets into a 3-year plan takes a bit of strategy and applied methodology. So with 168 parks and 1,800 total square acreage of park space, We rely on really kind of creating criteria and methodology around, again, that equity-led decision-making planning. So next slide, please. So again, with the objective, creating this priority ranking, an internal rating system that's going to better track the relationship between the actual investments that we make and the condition. So we've created a couple different ways to do that. We have a prioritization process that then that's with the overall park score. And then there's an individual amenities score. So we kind of look at parks as a whole, but then we also look at the individual amenities within parks that can have incremental or smaller strategic investments that will help the park be elevated. So next slide, please. So when we look at our prioritization process for parks, we apply a kind of a weighted criteria score. These are example qualifiers to create the priority. We look at the condition. We look if this park is program permitted, staffed, or has special events in it. We look at heavy usage. Heavy usage is a little bit of something where we probably could use a little assistance in better defining. We use our kind of internal staff to kind of help determine if this is a heavy usage park or not. So we're kind of looking towards ways to even use cell phone data. That might be one way. Trust for Public Land has brought that option to the table as something we could look into to actually track and be able to better qualify and quantify what heavy usage means. We look if there are parks in similar condition within a half mile, and now we've actually upgraded that qualifier to within the 10-minute walk campaign initiative. So we look at things, if there's a cluster of poorly conditioned park, or if there's one kind of offset, but we've got 3 others, we look at kind of a comprehensive planning area, not just kind of the one single park area that we're looking at. And then we have the recommendation for capital improvements, and that's where we work with other city departments like city planning to help inform the answer for this based on the neighborhood and feedback and their institutional knowledge based around it. So next slide, please. And then when we look at our individual amenities, that's going to be closer related to our basketball courts, tennis courts, basketball courts, tennis courts, and baseball diamonds, and then our playgrounds. These are some of the qualifiers that we use as well. So we're really kind of trying to whittle this down to a very systematic approach where we fill in all of the information for all of the assets, and then that generates priority scores, and that's what we follow along, and that's what informs our capital investment plan. So next slide, please. So when we look at our funding, we've got a couple different ways that we can fund this. The primary source is our city bonds. Those are sold annually. So we put forth a plan annually as to where we're going to go with our city investment for the parks. We shoot for a $5 million bond ask each year. $4 million of that is set aside for capital investment in parks where we're taking the park down to the gravel and we're rebuilding from the start. And then $1 million is set aside for capital repairs. Excuse me. So those are our smaller strategic investments that we're identifying throughout the city. Maybe it's just a basketball court or a tennis court that needs revitalized, but within an otherwise well-conditioned park. So that's kind of the 80-20 split that you see from that $5 million ask every year. Additionally, we can fold in council funds should they have specific requests for projects. One example of that would be Councilman Casey. He came to us and wanted a half basketball court built in Mohican. So that was not part of our capital plan, but that was an asset that ended up getting built because of a council request. We see a lot of outside private investment. One example of that would be over at Infant Park. St. Joe's came to us and said that they wanted to do some improvements out at the tennis court. So we partnered with them to get that done. So that's another way that we can get park improvements done throughout the city. And we often do the cost estimates determined internal. And that kind of gives us a better way of being able to navigate the funding strategy so that exactly how many assets and how many parks within that $5 million we can move forward with. So next slide, please. A lot of information on this page. I don't expect everyone to be able to take it in, but this is kind of going to take us through basically the last 3 years. As I stated earlier, in 2016 is kind of when we were asked to develop this plan. And that's when we ended up kind of taking our baseline condition scores. 2017 was the first actual funding year in which we put this plan forward. And this is kind of the visual representation of how we were able to systematically, from a 2016 baseline condition score across our overall park score and then individual amenities. And you'll see on this chart how there's these incremental improvements after year that can be actually qualified through the condition score ratings. So next slide, please. So then we go into the 2018-2019 CIP outcomes. This, again, a lot of information on here, not necessarily meant for everyone to dial down into, but this is kind of the way that we track our information, the locations that we've been to, and again, those incremental improvements from a condition score perspective at the top. And then the next slide is actually, if you could, Kristen, thank you. Really the capital investment program outcomes over the last 3 years. So again, 2016 was our baseline. 2017 was our first funding year where we were actually placing investments. So these are the overall condition outcomes from that 3-year investment from an internal rating score. We have from our overall parks condition score over a 16% internal rating improvement with our tennis courts. We're at 45% improvement internal rating score. With our basketball courts, we've improved over a fourth of our inventory, and then with our baseball diamonds at 38%. And you can see those totals at the bottom. So there's been a lot of park improvements and then overall amenity improvements that we've been able to accomplish with I don't want to say small amount, but not a ton of money. As you can see on the right-hand side, a little over $10 million over the last 3 years. And we've been able to rebuild 10 new parks, renovate 32 tennis courts, 29 basketball courts, 24 baseball diamonds. We've improved 23 playgrounds and put up 33 new park signs. So we feel pretty confident that the plan itself kind of squeezes every dollar out of what we can accomplish throughout our system. And then if you could go to the next slide, please. This is kind of the CIP outcome that's really kind of that granular breakdown where we track it year to year. So again, you'll see that overall park score at the top from 2016 when we did our internal rating score starting at a 2.87 and then ending up at a 3.33, where we feel confident that this plan represents is accurate. Is earlier in the presentation you heard the Trust for Public Lands kind of national ranking score for Cleveland, and we have been kind of following the progression with our internal process along with the national process and incrementally increasing our score. So I think we started at 43, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, 43 in 2016, 45 in 2017, then we went to 35, and now we're at 29. So we can see kind of that proof of concept from our methodology of investment that we're getting a national recognition, including that kind of correlating with our internal rating system where we see these investments kind of yielding these positive results in our condition score. So if you go to the next slide, please, thank you. So these are kind of some of the outcomes that we've seen over this 3-year plan. Again, these strategic investments are building the overall neighborhood development, and we kind of see that throughout different neighborhoods. The increase in park scores, both internally and externally, is just kind of stated with the Trust for Public Land national ranking, but then you saw in the previous slide, our internal ranking scores still going up. This allows for long and short-term planning, which is really nice for our CDCs and block hubs and residents because they can have a little more confidence in where our investments are going to go in a longer-term aspect. We're kind of getting more intentional in partnering with our outside organizations like Trust for Public Land, Cleveland Cavaliers, and being able to kind of do a lot more park projects. The Cleveland Indians have been great with us with their Fields for the Future program, and we're kind of able to work with them in a more intentional way because we have this plan in place. We have the systematic improvement of the overall city portfolio. And then what we're also looking to do is reduce the maintenance pressures on public works staff by right sizing our inventory. A lot of our historic inventory is coming from when we had a population of 1 million people in Cleveland. That's no longer the case. So we look at that where there's opportunities to kind of right size our inventory and condense things, but improve the overall quality without reducing access. That's what we don't want to do. We don't want to reduce access, but we also need to right size our inventory. Next slide, please. So lessons learned. That's kind of we've finished up our 3-year cycle. We're into 2020 now, and kind of looking at how to continue to improve on this methodology. First lesson learned was input and engagement, which Sean pretty much highlighted perfectly on the first part of this presentation. And that's how we ended up kind of with the 10-minute walk initiative, the activity book, and wanting to make sure that when we take a park plan to the community, they are allowed more input than just what color the playground equipment is. We want to make sure that we're building spaces for people, for the people who are actually going to be using them, and being really intentional about that. We want to be cross-training staff. It's going to be important for everyone to kind of understand the methodology as to how these investments are getting done. And then they can also be helpful, specific to our park maintenance crew. And then, so it's not just mocap kind of going out with a single vision. We have upgraded our criteria from a half-mile radius to the 10-minute walk to be in line with our 10-minute walk initiative. We're leveraging funds with those outside partners a lot more. We're able to do that and have more of those intentional strategic conversations with our partners. And then also being able to go after more grant opportunities. They kind of like to see that planning process in place. And now that we have this kind of solid planning, we're able to identify a lot more opportunities. Leveraging the public-private partnerships, and then the cross-departmental involvement. Since we've been able to work with, since MoCap has been able to really work hand in hand with the Office of Sustainability and city planning, I think that we've gotten a really comprehensive handle on how we are creating these park spaces and what it's going to mean to the community and the impact. And then this community engagement strategy that we're going along with is really just going to help elevate the plan even more. So next slide, please. So in summary, from the plan, what we're trying to do is look at the city as a whole. We don't really put any wards or addresses or anything like that on our plan. We go where the investment is needed. So we really try to look at the city comprehensively and not individually within neighborhoods or wards or anything like that. We're really trying to get those strategic smaller investments spread throughout the city to kind of increase those overall park scores while allowing for long and short-term planning. This systematic methodology to investment, it really helps us justify the places in which we're spending money. So when we go to council or when we have presentations like this, we can really kind of explain the thought process behind why we're investing where we're investing, and then allowing for those measurable outcomes. We want to make sure that we can basically have proof of concept as to how we are investing our money and how that is improving our portfolio as a whole. And we feel like that allows us for further investment and kind of going back to council and the administration and justifying the plan, allowing for continued investment in this plan. So I think that's all I had. Next slide. Yeah, I think that was it. So yeah, sorry if that was kind of dry. It's not nearly as colorful as Sean's, but that's the plan in a nutshell.
While it may have lacked in color, it was robust in information, and I think laying out that process, it doesn't need to have a lot of fun bells and whistles because it is very systematic. So it was helpful to sort of see the areas that we were improving in the different park areas. So I want to, I have not been able to keep an eye on the chat. I want to just invite all of our attendees to, if you have any questions for our presenters, please include those there. We're going to just do some Q&A between now and the end. I have one question that I want to ask for both of you as we get started. What is your favorite park and why?
I'll go first because I already know it off the top of my head. I love Lincoln Park. I love Lincoln Park because I feel like since like the 1920s when that park was built, there was community adopted that green space and has really activated it and made it its own. And it's become such an asset to that community. And there's not a lot there. There's a pool and a playground and a big open space, but the residents do, fall fests and farmers markets, and the CDC is really active over there. So I think for me, Lincoln Park represents what a park could look like for a community once they activate the space and adopt it and really want to just kind of use it as they will. And so Lincoln Park definitely is one of those that are kind of inspirational. And I wish for other communities that they would use their park spaces in the same sort of way.
For me, well, first off, I haven't been in Cleveland long, so there are a number of park spaces that I need to get to. But for me, in the short time that I've been here, I would say Kane Park in Cleveland Heights. I'm all about maximizing the potential of space in parks, and I was really blown away when the first time I visited that park, how it strikes the balance of, especially for a community and neighborhood scale park, of passive recreation, active recreation, and then also the entertainment space, which because of COVID, I didn't get a chance to take advantage of this summer, but hoping to be able to do that next year.
Thank you. So we do have a questions from the audience. The first one looks like is for Sean. Can you give an example of the unlimited activity book ideas that were surprising and or great that were put into park design? So hopefully you've been receiving some responses back. Was there anything that was really surprising, interesting, worth sharing?
Yep. We haven't had a significant amount of feedback, but we have gotten some. Let's see. I was trying to jot that down while we were talking. Folks want to see a pet-friendly space. We had really good conversation with a couple seniors in the area where they like to see passive recreation game tables for chess and dominoes, and a music garden. Youth would like to see a ninja course in the fitness area. And probably the most important takeaway that I was able to note was just the importance of traffic calming and how that space could really slow cars down and also be used to support the existing bike infrastructure with a repair shop, a docking station. And I'll note that there is an existing Safe Routes to School route that's recognized by the Ohio Department of Transportation. And we hopefully would like to incorporate a little bit more of that route into the space.
Awesome. And we just had right before this a Vision Zero breakout talking about some of those traffic calming pieces. So that's excellent. This next question is for you, Jess. Thanks for laying this all out. What if a group of residents wanted to make small improvements to the park? Would they be allowed? Would their potential contribution influence the ranking of the park? And we just lost Jessica. So Kayla, give us 1 second and we will, it looks like she's hopefully back now. We'll ask that question to Jess again. In the meantime, I'm going to move on to maybe another question. Let's see here.
That kind of popped out there.
Hey, sorry about that. That's the fun part about being virtual, and absolutely. I appreciate everybody's patience, just bearing with us as we get through this. So I'm guessing you did not maybe hear this question.
But I'll answer it if you could repeat it.
Beautiful. Okay, so it's from Kayla at Neighborhood Connections. Thanks for laying this all out. What if a group of residents wanted to make small improvements to the park? Would they be allowed? And maybe you could just talk on sort of what the process is if there are residents interested in that, and would their potential contribution influence the ranking of the park?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. We always welcome residents wanting to make any improvements in their park spaces. As I understand it, the parks are owned by the Department of Public Works, and the Department of Public Works has blanket legislation to accept quote unquote gifts under the value of $10,000. So that would be a agreement that would have to be established with the Department of Public Works, and that is Director Michael Cox, that would be your point of contact for that. I'm happy to kind of work as the liaison between the two, which I do often. So please feel free, if there's anyone out there who does have a willingness to make any type of improvements, I'm happy to work with you and walk through that process. But really, there would be kind of an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, or a shared lease agreement where we would have to allow you access into the park, and then kind of understand that scope and value of improvement. I don't think anything under $10,000 would affect the overall ranking of a park. We're really kind of looking at those larger assets like basketball courts and tennis courts and playgrounds. Those tend to be kind of six-figure investments. So I don't think that you're at risk of kind of skewing any priority for future investment if you're making those smaller investments as a neighborhood. But again, happy to work as that liaison between the Department of Public Works if there's any groups out there who would like to do that, and I can walk you through the process.
Excellent. Another question that we have, sort of geared towards Jessica, but Sean, I think you can weigh in on this as well. Is anyone looking at public art across city parks? This is Ari from the Cuyahoga Valley National Park and is interested in some placemaking efforts. So maybe if we can talk about sort of the role of public art in placemaking, and Jessica, just sort of what the city has, and then Sean, maybe a higher level.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually chair the Public Art Committee for the City of Cleveland. We have a Percent for Art program, Chapter 186. So very quickly, we set 1.5% of capital investments over $300,000 for the purposes. Those public art projects follow the investment. So we are a little handcuffed in kind of being able to come up with a comprehensive strategic plan for public art throughout the city. We understand that we have public art deserts in certain spaces. That's one part of it. That's kind of how public art gets generated through a capital investment standpoint. Tara Petras, Petras, is our public art coordinator, and she's in city planning. So if there are additional efforts for city or for placemaking or public art investment in certain spaces, she would be the best person to coordinate those permits and actions through. But from a capital standpoint in parks, we see public art wherever the investment is. So one example of that would be Miriam Ortiz Park. We just had our artists kind of do a gateway arch. And those are kind of the different public art pieces that you'll see that follow the park investment. But again, those follow the location, so we don't really have a great strategic plan in place that we can follow through on.
Jesse, you kind of stole my thunder with the gateway comment, but we do at both here locally and nationally. The Trust for Public Land recognizes the value of placemaking and art in parks and open spaces in general. And while we haven't done a lot of that specific to nodal park opportunities, we're here working closely with the sewer district, and we partner with Land Studio on some art integration in some of their green spaces. So again, green infrastructure and open space is sort of equally valuable to community users.
Our next question is from Councilman Brancatelli for Jessica. How has it been, but I think, this is something that Sean, you could probably touch on as well. How has it been working with ODOT and other traffic engineers to help support agendas like our downtown connector for East Side access to our trails and parks?
Well, thank you for the question, Councilman. I appreciate that. I want to stay in my lane, and I haven't done too much of that coordinating with ODOT. That generally seems to kind of be coming out of our real estate department over with Ada. I think he does a lot of that trail coordinating and would be probably better suited to answer that. So I kind of don't want to give this group false information. But I know Ada, his Commissioner DeRosa and his group, specifically Ada, work a lot with ODOT and do a lot of that coordinating through grants and different trail systems to connect the towpath and different opportunities. So I know those efforts are being coordinated in City Hall. I'm not quite familiar enough to inform too much of how those relationships work.
And Sean, any thoughts from your end on sort of how those trails and access points really help make a difference in how people are enjoying and actually accessing our parks?
Yeah, so I've gotten involved with the Cuyahoga Greenways Partnership. It's really a consortium of planners, transportation folks, and we're really thinking about infill strategies for the existing greenways network. As it relates to the Trust for Public Land, obviously creating destinations are important for bike commuters, for people who bike for leisure, and so creating opportunities for more outlets, both on the greenway or near the greenway, is sort of a focus of ours.
Let's see. I don't see too many other questions from our audience. I might ask maybe one more, and then I think we'll be okay to wrap up. So I think one of the things that I've sort of been exposed to as, you know, a part of this project and working with both of you are just the unique ways that people have utilized park spaces. Just curious, you know, as we've been working through this, what are some of the most interesting ways that you've seen it? Jessica, I know you touched on that a little bit with like Lincoln Park, but what sort of, you know, maybe one thing that you've seen that you're like, wow, that is, I would have never thought of that. And I don't know who wants to go first. Jess, you're muted if you are.
Sorry, I was. We've got a pretty dense refugee population actually in Cleveland, and the way that they use green spaces in parks is different than kind of your traditional way. And so the Ohio Parks and Recreation Association, the things that was understood was that they actually use parks more so for sustenance, actually reason different things. That's just something that I would have never thought about. So kind of being thoughtful in the sense that when we go into those communities to have those different opportunities is something that I think we need to be a little more intentional about, and kind of just understanding the demographics of where we're putting spaces into. So that was something that I kind of learned through this process, that those culturally relevant experiences in those park spaces are going to be really important, so those residents feel welcome and valued in their spaces.
For me, I'd say it's just the replication of the fitness experience, and not beyond just running and biking. I've really seen people kind of draw to parks for, in this COVID reality, you know, people are maybe going to gyms less, or at a point weren't going at all. And just seeing how folks have sort of recreated the gym experience by creating exercise circuits in parks, and sort of doing it with, you know, in fellowship with other people, safely, of course, but making that a part of their routine. Interestingly enough, there is a national initiative that the Trust for Public Land supports, fitness zones in parks. We've done a lot of work in some warm weather cities like Atlanta and in cities in California where that has taken off. But I'm really interested in exploring what the potential for that here in Cleveland is like. I know we've done some pilot examples on CMHA properties around the city, and I'd like to definitely explore more, especially while that's on people's minds, you know, empowering themselves, exercising, not necessarily relying on gyms to do that.
Awesome. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out this session. I just want to again thank Sean Terry from the Trust for Public Land and Jessica Fox-Gift from our City of Cleveland Mayor's Office of Capital Projects. This has been the Parks for People Creating Access, Elevating Equity breakout session. Again, just want to thank all of you for joining us. We hope you continue to join us the rest of today. We've got several great breakout sessions this afternoon. And again, want to thank our sponsors and Cleveland Public Library for hosting us here on the Hop-In platform. So everyone have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again, Sean and Jessica.
Thank you.